writing, putting that one on the end of all the dates that you may have to set up. I'm going to turn the level of the volume down a little bit. Every time it's set for Mass, it's always set very high, so I want to turn it back just a little bit so that hopefully I'm not blowing out your speakers. We're still in the Christmas season, these days after Epiphany until next weekend when we'll celebrate the baptism of the Lord. But we get a special saint today, really for the United States, St. Elizabeth Ann Seton. She's the first native-born American saint. So I'll talk about her in a little bit, but just a reminder of our schedule coming up this week. Tomorrow on Tuesday, we do have confession starting at 5:30 and going until 6:15, and then there's Mass at 6:30, followed by the Rosary after Mass. So that's on Tuesday. Wednesday, there are confessions from 7 to 7:45 in the morning before Mass at 8 o'clock. And then there is a funeral on Wednesday, so we will begin adoration after the funeral. So right around noon, adoration of the Blessed Sacrament will begin in the church, and that will continue throughout the day. And being the first Wednesday of the month, we will conclude it with a Holy Hour at 6 p.m., and that will conclude at 7 p.m. So that'll be live streamed. And then also, too, on Thursday and Friday, we have Mass at 8 o'clock. So that's our that schedule coming up this week. So that one slight alteration is no adoration on Wednesday morning. It'll start around noon on Wednesday afternoon and go then until the Holy Hour in the evening. As I mentioned, a little bit about St. Elizabeth Ann Seton. She was born here in the United States, which is, but she was born, I had to say, she was born in 1774, so even before we had declared independence, she was born here. And she was raised in an Episcopalian family, and her mother died when she was very young. I think when she was 3 years old, her mother died, but her father was a physician and a professor of anatomy at King's College, which would later be Columbia University. So they're kind of on the East Coast there. He's teaching, or he's teaching in New York City. So he was also the first health officer of New York City. During the Revolution, though, he remained loyal to the British and actually helped to treat British soldiers during the war. It ends up that at the age of 20, Elizabeth was married to William McGee Seton, a wealthy young shipping merchant, and they became the parents of 5 children, 2 sons and 3 daughters. When Elizabeth was growing up, kind of, I think probably under the influence of her father, her goal was to become like a nurse and to help nurse poor people, to try to set up set up homes or whatever to nurse the sick, especially the poor. And so after her marriage, she founded an organization in New York City called the Society for the Relief of Poor Widows with Small Children, for which she became known as the Protestant Sister of Charity. So she's starting already to care for those who are poor. Most of this is through health. We'll see later that she's more famous for education, but what happens is her husband's shipping business unfortunately goes bankrupt because a lot of the ships were destroyed during wars, and he develops tuberculosis. And so as a way to try and they thought that a cure may be a sunnier climate, so Elizabeth and her husband William, and their eldest daughter Anna, they went to Italy to try and find this sunnier climate, this warmer area for a cure for tuberculosis. He dies there in 1803, shortly after their voyage, but Elizabeth remained in Italy till the following May, staying with a family a Catholic family who were friends of the Setons. And that's where she felt an increasing draw to Catholicism. And when she returned to the United States, she was determined to become a Catholic. She took instruction and was received into the new faith on the March 14th of 1805. That caused some problems with her Episcopalian family, who opposed her decisions, and she kind of lost a lot of her friends because of this, and she found herself in pretty dire financial straits. So in an effort to make ends meet, she started a school in New York, but this was forced to close as parents withdrew their children on the grounds of her Catholicism. So we see back then that the differences in faith were quite substantial and caused a lot of problems and a lot of anxiety or a lot of separation even among families. So she, I think, under the guidance or support of a priest, she gathered around her a group of like-minded women, just like she had done for that widow society, and they wanted to start a school. So she, a priest from Baltimore, invited her to open a school for girls there, and so they opened that in 1808, and it flourished. And then she gathered around this group of like-minded women with the idea of establishing a congregation of nuns. A priest, with the blessing of the Bishop of Baltimore, John Carroll, kind of witnessed her first vows as a religious on March 25th of 1809. The community adopted a religious habit and took the name of the Sisters of St. Joseph. And from that on, Elizabeth was known as Mother Seton, so maybe we know her as that name too. The title was appropriate because some of her own children were still kind of living with her. They had this place called the Stone House where they founded this congregation. And she also, too, was the superior of the women who were joining the order. The community adopted, with some modifications and adaptations, the rule of the French Daughters of Charity of St. Vincent de Paul, and so became known as the Daughters of Charity of St. Joseph. By January of 1812, 20 women, including Elizabeth's two sisters-in-law, had joined the community. The congregation spread rapidly, starting a home in Philadelphia in 1814 and caring for the children of St. Joseph's Orphanage in Emmitsburg, Maryland. 3 years later, the sisters opened an orphanage in New York City. Wherever they went, they opened schools and taught in orphanages. She wrote textbooks, translated books from French into English, and composed hymns and spiritual discourses. She and her congregation are rightly regarded as the founders of the American parochial school system. And so the Sisters of Charity that's kind of the group that was founded by Mother Seton. So she died in Emmitsburg on the 4th of January, 1821, by which time her congregation had spread to some 20 houses across the United States. Their work and influence has grown ever since. There are now 5 independent communities of Sisters of Charity, and a 6th which merged with the French Daughters of Charity in 1850. They staff hospitals, child care institutions, homes for the aged and handicapped, and schools at every level. There are houses in South as well as North America, in Italy, and in mission countries. And so her cause for canonization started pretty early. James Cardinal Gibbons of Baltimore formally introduced her cause in 1907. She was declared venerable by John the 23rd in 1959 and beatified by him in 1963. And she was canonized by Pope Paul VI on September 14th in 1975. So we can be thankful. Anybody who went to a Catholic parochial school in the United States, Mother Seton is kind of the patron saint of that. So I want to ask for her intercession as we continue to look out for and pray for one another. And hopefully as we begin this new year, everybody is off to a good start. And so pray that through the intercession of St. Elizabeth Ann